I actually wanted to be a wife and a mother really badly. But I also had a talent for finding men who did not want to commit. Yes, if there was a non-committal man in America, chances are I dated him. Hi, friend. You might not be surprised to find out that the number one question I get asked is, how did you meet your husband? And it's a really good question because for the longest time, it did not look like that was going to happen, like there was never going to be a husband. And it wasn't like I didn't want this to happen. No, I actually wanted to be a wife and a mother really badly. But I also had a talent for finding men who did not want to commit. Yes, if there was a non-committal man in America, chances are I dated him. Which led to a life, I just kind of accepted it. I had a job, I had a business, I traveled, I had friends, I had pets. I just kind of accepted that that was going to be my life. And part of that, like a lot of single women in America, I had gay boyfriends who I spent a lot of time with. And I would get the question, Daryn, how are you ever going to meet a guy if all you do is hang out with your gay boyfriends? Well, let's call them and find out. Well, hi there, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey.
Hey, Dak. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Thanks for calling.
Well, I'm calling because I was having kind of a nostalgic, kind of emotional day, thinking about good things that have happened. And I wanted to call and say, thank you for finding me a husband. That's my thank you for finding me a husband call.
Wow. You're welcome.
I know you're laughing at me, but that's okay. Well, I wanted to go back to that day, but before we do that, I was trying to think of all these other things. I mean, you guys were the original husbands, and how did you guys meet?
I have a friend named Jim, and Michael also had this friend, but in a professional, they worked together manner. And so I was at a birthday party. Jim happened to be there. We were having a great time talking, interacting. And then unbeknownst to me, Jim went to Michael and said, I've got somebody you need to meet. I was single. Michael was single. And then at that point, I'm not sure totally of the story, so I'm throwing it to Michael.
What was it on your end, Michael?
Well, so, Jim and I were both single and platonic friends, and we would hang out and have dinner and talk about this kind of stuff. And when he called me, he said that he knew this person that he thought I should meet. And my first question was, is he cute? And Jim said, I think he is, which is not exactly a ringing endorsement. Like, I think he is, but like, you might not think he is. And so I said, sure. And so Jim wanted to meet somebody I knew. And that was all arranged for a Friday in June. And it didn't happen because that person I knew was sick. And so it was just the three of us on our blind date.
So the blind date did happen, but just the three of us.
Right. Not for Jim.
And here we are 30 years later.
Yep.
Exactly. I think at some point Jim made a fake yawn and like, oh, I'm really tired. Time for me to go. And so he left.
We sent him a gift on our 25th.
Oh, that was nice. That was See, that was your thank you for finding me a husband gift.
Exactly. That was 5 years ago, right?
Actually, now I'm feeling, oh my gosh, this is just a phone call, but now I actually owe you a gift. Not just a phone call.
Hello. Waiting.
Okay, note to self, send a gift. But then also I was trying to think how we met, because it does feel like forever there's been Craig and Michael in my life, but to do the math, that's not true. I think we met like 97, 98 when I was switching from doing sports at CNN to doing news. And we met at a party.
I know for sure we met you before 1999 because you were at Cooper's baby shower, obviously, in May or April of 1999.
No, I was not at that baby shower. Tracy and I threw that baby shower.
You co-hosted. Yes. I stand corrected. That was your gift.
That was my gift. There you go. And we'll get to that. But so you guys, you've been married, you've been together 30 years, married a really long time. You're the original husbands. If I think our math is correct. And now I remember. So Tracy and I went to Stanford together. And this was another friend, Leslie from Stanford, who was living in Atlanta for a while. And this was a party at Leslie's. And that's where we met. But right. I think we kind of hit it off from the beginning and became part of each other's lives. And
Well, and you kept calling and I kept saying, okay, I guess we should probably answer her calls.
And here I am. I'm still calling. This is a trend. I call my friends. I've just made a podcast out of it instead. That's just kind of where we are. It wasn't possible in 1997 or whatever. And so what that means is if you do the math, we were friends. I mean, for well over 10 years, I was single. Yeah. Yes.
Correct. And math is not my strong suit.
Yeah.
Math, neither math or history.
Oh, math
apparently.
wasn't. Well, so if you do that, then I was also thinking you have met various men that I dated and hated some of them more than others. But we're kind of around for the whole dating history, which, let's just be real, was not the most successful dating history in the history of America.
Well, it's never successful until it is, right?
And it wouldn't have been successful if you guys hadn't taken matters into your own hands, which is the purpose of this call. And going to that fateful day, we went to Summerfest. And we can talk about why we were spending so much time that weekend, because it is kind of a weird reason. You guys are being very, very good friends for me.
Mm-hmm.
But does the NDA, does it apply to this conversation?
Well, okay, I'll just spell it out. So I'll just true confession. So I had not dated for a long time. I think 4 years at that point. And the reason is because I was still hung up on the last boyfriend, who we don't have to mention names, but he was getting married on that day. So I was still sad that he was getting married. And we keep it real on this thing. It's very weird to still be upset about a boyfriend from 4 years before that was getting married. But here we are in all our imperfections. And so you guys, realizing what was going on, you said, okay, busy, busy, busy. We are going to be very busy this weekend. And you kept me moving. We went to dinner Friday night, and this was Saturday, I believe. And so we went to this thing called Summerfest. And Summerfest is like one of those spring festivals they have in Atlanta, yes? Yeah.
Right, for the neighborhood of Virginia Highland. And there's food, there's live music, just supremely popular. It's like a fun 2 or 3 days. Yeah. And we were there.
You go look at all the art, and like you said, you eat bad food and it's hot and sweaty, and then you go home and you see some people you might know, and it's just kind of a neighborhood festival kind of thing. And as you had mentioned briefly, you had become dads in this time. So you adopted Cooper, and at this point he was in elementary school, right? So he probably was.
So if it's 2010, he was in 11.
11. Okay. So and finishing fifth grade.
Because we had him at Summerfest when he was literally 2 or 3 weeks old back in 1999. So his birthday's right around there. So I think he would have been 11.
That's right. So it would be right after his birthday, since it was the beginning of June. Okay. So we're walking around Summerfest. This is what I remember. And then you can say if you remember differently. We're walking around Summerfest. We looked at the art. We went to eat. And since you have a kid, we're doing tag teams. So Michael and Cooper and I sat down with food, and then Craig goes off to get his own food.
This is the funny part to me. Why in the world was I at a funnel cake vendor? I mean, it's the epitome of festival food. And I must have had, I don't know, but I think it was the funnel cake truck. Yes. And I'm getting funnel cakes.
Well, and the reason he says that is because that's kind of not his genre of food, really. I mean, that wouldn't be his first choice, probably.
For the record, what would be your first choice at a festival like this?
Oh my God. Gyro, something healthier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, is there anything unhealthier than a funnel cake? So Michael, Cooper, and I are seated, and you go off to eat. And of all the food choices, of all the food trucks, of booths, and whatever, you pick funnel cakes. And there's a line.
There's a line, and there's in that line. And again, I'm not the best historian, but in that line, is it okay if I mention his name?
Yes. That name you can mention.
Right.
Okay. In that line is a guy named Trent. And Trent has a daughter who at that time was also about Cooper's age, and they went to the same school. And that school happens to be 60 feet away from where this festival is occurring. And so we start talking.
So you recognize him as like a fellow dad, right? Like, oh, there's a dad with a kid in my school. So you guys had been class dads.
They had,
yes.
Right. And we used to see him out at dinner at Friday night at El Taco, which is the big place for the parents and the kids to go. And many times it would be him and he and Kendall just eating there, and we'd say hello. Maybe he might be with a friend. So we didn't really know him, but we knew of it.
Yeah. So we just started talking. So we make our purchases, and I'm like, Michael and Cooper are back in the field, sitting at a table eating. Come join us. And we make our way back.
So you invite him and Kendall over. You're not thinking fix up. You're just being Craig, Mr. Social, like everything's a party. The more the merrier. Come on and join us.
I mean, totally, because it would be connection with Kendall and Cooper, and then, of course, Michael and Trent.
But Michael, you weren't even there for that part. So, because you're sitting at the table with me. So you and I are sitting there, and I can still remember this like yesterday. Here, and Craig, you're quite tall. So here comes across the field. You can't miss Craig and these other two people who I don't know who it is. And then, Michael, you actually spy them first. Do you remember what you did?
I'm pretty sure I probably grabbed you or tapped you or something and said, incoming, incoming, incoming.
As I remember it, you slugged me in the side of my arm and you're like, single, incoming, incoming. And it's as if like, oh, here comes a potential fix up for you, for me. And I just looked at you and I'm like, oh God, Michael, today is not the day. Yeah. I think before we go farther with the story, I think we should call Trent, because this is where he literally enters the story. So we should let him say.
Are you still in touch with him?
Actually, literally in touch.
Do you have his number?
I do. As a matter of fact, I can't give it out, but like we can get him. So stand by. Let's go ahead and call him and bring him in the conversation as well. Hi, husband.
Hello, friend.
Friend. Yes, we are friends. Hey, I was just talking. I was having a call with Craig and Michael, and we were reminiscing about how they found me a husband, and I was calling to thank them. And we were just kind of going over the story. And we got to the part of the story where you literally walk into the story, where you and Kendall and Craig are walking across the field at Inman Middle School. And we thought, well, let's call Trent and bring him into the story as well.
So glad to have been included. Great to see you, Craig and Michael.
Hey, Trent.
So what do you remember, Trent, from being in that funnel cake line and running into Craig?
So I remember it goes back a little earlier in the day where Kendall was, I think, nine going on 10 maybe. And we knew the festival was there. We wanted something to do. We wanted to eat out. And so we walked over to it, actually. And I remember the funnel cake line. And I remember the first thing I saw was Craig. And I had not just enough time to get Kendall to be happy with that food choice. And got in line, and Craig, in his very warm, welcoming way, welcomed us to the festival, offered a table, with Michael, and so we and Cooper, and so we obliged, and so that's what we did. Brought our food over. Very loud band, I remember, and then I saw you at the table. And
What'd you think? What'd you think? You can be honest.
I had no preconceived or postconceived notions. I was there for a funnel cake and was very glad to have been welcomed. And if I remember, it was so loud. The band was so loud. It was difficult for the adjacents to even speak. And you were maybe diametrically on a round table, so we were pretty far distance from each other. So you had very large sunglasses on, as if it were like a supernova was about to come in. So I remembered that. Stylish.
Yeah, I remember that. But
large. Yes.
You didn't know who I was. Yeah, large, right. You didn't know who I was, or just this random lady with big sunglasses that were with Craig and Michael.
I didn't. I had met you once before, though you don't remember.
Well, that is true.
Right.
We have a kind of one of these sliding doors kind of things of we'd be in the same place, but
no, there was no recollection,
no recognition,
nope.
nothing like that. And if somebody was listening, if a friend was listening to the story for the first time, I guess we should kind of catch them up. Well, no, I want to wait on that. So yeah, we did visit a little bit, but it was really loud. And I think you might have mentioned that you were looking at a house in my neighborhood in Ansley Park, of moving there. And we talked a little bit about that. And I mean, that was kind of it.
Right. It was difficult for any of us to exchange. It was a nice day to be out. It was very loud music. It was difficult to talk. We were all glad to get a seat. It was pretty crowded, but not a great space for any interaction. I think mostly because of the loud music and even those close to us. Maybe Cooper was on my left, Kendall on my right, if I remember. I'm not sure, but you were three persons over. So.
And that was it. And so it was just like 10 minutes and you and Kendall go off and I stay with Craig and Michael. And then Michael, do you remember saying anything to me?
Well, I think before you get it, I do think Michael maybe introduced us. Michael introduced us. I mean, like shook hands across the table. I do remember that. So
sparks flew.
That
nothing
was
like that. Nothing.
Yeah, that was it.
You got nothing. Okay, that was it.
I don't remember saying anything later.
I remember you turning to me after, this is after Kendall and Trent go off, and you turned to me and said, "Hey, what do you think? Like, could this be a prospect?" And I kind of went, "Huh? Like, maybe." And you said,
"Well, and
go ahead."
Oh, what did I say?
You said, "My little was more than you'd heard out of me in like 20 years. And so you decided to take matters into your own hands." Because that would have been it. Well, I think that would have been it.
Well, and it's also interesting because it wasn't exactly the weekend for, you said no sparks flew. You weren't in a real sparky place.
No, I was not. I was in a sad place. I was in a sad place.
So.
But do you remember what you did after that?
I think I probably emailed Trent just to see if he was single.
And maybe interested. I think you're underplaying it a little bit. I think you tried to kind of push this a little bit more than it would have done if we had been, the two of us had been left to our own devices.
I'll gladly take the credit. I don't remember exactly because, I can be a little much.
You?
So just a tad.
Well, Trent, do you remember?
But I remember his. So go ahead, Trent.
I remember
getting an
email from Michael. I remember asking personally if I was single or in a relationship. Do you remember that? He didn't bring you into it at this point. So maybe it was maybe a whole lineup of friends he was going to try out, and you was just the first. Yeah. And so that's how it kind of started, and there's more to the story, I'm sure. I think my response, there might have been a bit of snark in it if I remember right. What did I say, Mike? You remember what I said?
You said something like, "Well, Michael, I thought you were with Craig."
Yeah, so you just never know. I mean, the pickup lines are hard, right? Pickup lines are typically individual rather than third person. And so it's certainly fair for, yeah.
And I didn't say asking for a friend. So
yes.
That's true. Fair enough.
So then I think that might have forced Michael to actually name you. I think in his follow-up, I think that's how the connection was actually made. I think you actually responded to that, and then you introduced Daryn into the purpose of the conversation, if I remember correctly. So that at that point the beans were spilled. That your reaction.
Well, and I think you said something about
Oh,
whatever you had going on was kind of complicated.
Single was not a good adjective. At the time.
I'm just going to jump in here, guys.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, did you want to say one more thing about that?
I'm sure you'll prompt the memory as you inject your. So at what point did you know that you were part of the loop, wife?
Me?
Yeah.
When did I know?
Yeah.
Well, I heard back from Michael, who let on that he's like, oh, well, I emailed Trent and I asked him. I'm like, oh, well, gee, thanks. Okay. So like, what did he say? And Michael said that he asked you over email, were you single? And what came back was, well, it's complicated. And honestly, that is all I needed to hear. I didn't need to hear a single thing more. I certainly had done complicated enough times in my many decades of not great choices. So that for me was the end of the story. It really was. It really was the end of the story. Until about 3 weeks later when you emailed me and asked me if I wanted to go to coffee. Kind of out of nowhere.
I did.
And there...
I had nothing to do with that.
That you didn't. But before we say goodbye to you guys, I do want to say... yes, I mean, there are other things that had to come together, but honestly, this would not have happened. There was some luck involved of the funnel cake and all that, but if you had not taken matters into your own hands and try to light a little fire under these two people, we would not be sitting here today. And for that, I thank you for doing what I was not able to do for myself, and that was find myself a husband. And I'm forever indebted, and I guess I owe you a gift.
You're very welcome. As I think about that story, what I think is a really important part of it is that we had a nice enough friendship that you trusted us that weekend. I mean, as we said, you weren't in a real sparky place. And I remember you even went to church with us. Not that you're anti-church, but you didn't exactly grow up Methodist. And you went to church with us on Sunday. And we spent a lot of time that weekend because you were, not feeling a lot of stuff. And so, that's the beginning of it. And then from that came this other opportunity.
And what an opportunity it's been. And you've been here for our whole ride as well. And we get to see you in a couple of weeks. You're coming down to Miss Lou's cabin down here at the marsh. And we can't wait to see you.
Us too.
Absolutely. And again, I just want to say, seriously, a matter of, instances that were not planned. And if one of them had not been part of that, it may not have worked out. So thank goodness I was craving funnel cake.
It comes down to funnel cake and good friends. Otherwise, I'm sitting here in the middle of the marsh all by myself.
Well, and it's how we met, Mm-hmm. If he weren't at Whit's 1-year birthday party, Whit is now 31 years old, and having a chat with Jim in the kitchen, none of this would have happened.
Well, there's another.
So actually, go ahead.
There's another piece. Go ahead and finish your thought, and I'll circle back. Why?
I was going to say, actually, who we need to thank is Jim, because Jim fixed you guys up, and then the cycle continues. But what was your other thought?
Well, it's kind of goes. It's fast forward to 2000. Was it 2009? This was right or 8? 2008. 2010. So Craig had many years of being room parents of the year. So he had a lot of street cred, and I was new guy on the new single parent on the block. So I actually learned from him, and that's how one of the reasons we were together is he knew I was trying to be this new room parent for. I think Cooper and Kendall maybe were in adjacent classes, different homeroom, but I was trying to figure all that out. And so when I was able to see how he did it, and never achieved the same level, but I dove in headfirst to being room parent to kind of figure it out. So Craig preceded me on that, and then certainly it continued to excel on that as the kids grew from middle to high school. So
I think you make a really good point that maybe I should have pointed out is that you three were I guess in the greater scheme of things, unusual dads. So with Cooper and with Craig and Michael, you have two men being dads raising a son. And then Trent, you were a single dad raising your daughter by yourself. It wasn't like it was like divorced dad Sunday. I mean, Kendall's mom had passed away and it was you and Kendall full time. You were doing the heavy lift all by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I love that aspect of the three guys, but not typical.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not typical. So maybe you had been on each other's radar a little bit more than just other dads who were in a different family situation.
True.
Yeah.
True. Absolutely.
And all have done phenomenal jobs. I'm proud to know all three of you as dads.
Thank you.
So thank you again, guys. We'll see you on the weekend. I'll try to get a gift before you get here.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
Don't you dare.
Our gift will be, we'll hold out for good boating weather when you get here.
Okay, good.
That is exactly where I was going. Perfect. Thank you.
You can buy me a fish basket.
With like a shrimp basket. Okay, you got it. You got it. Husband, don't you leave, but Craig and Michael are going to say bye.
Good seeing you guys.
Okay.
Bye, y'all.
See you soon.
Bye.
That was great. I'm grateful to have been called in. So that was good. Good to see them and great memories.
I guess if we kind of read or digest it. So you eventually did call me for coffee. Coffee lasted over 3 hours. At that Caribou at Piedmont and 10th Street in Atlanta. That Caribou coffee.
Yep.
Do you remember anything from that coffee?
Right next to the Rainbow Crosswalk.
Yes. Do you remember anything from that coffee, that first coffee, besides that it went over 3 hours?
I remember it was such easy conversation.
That's true.
And so that, that was, as a headline, is very easy to talk to. Very good listener.
Thank you. And then
told some funny vignettes. And it was good. It was, very long coffee.
Yeah, very long coffee. Till the day either one of us dies, we will have a debate over whether that was a first date or not. I say it was, and you say it wasn't.
We were in that 2 or 3 weeks of dark blackout.
Yes, I think as the young people say today, you ghosted me.
We were going from more complicated to less complicated, but not exactly single, uncomplicated.
Yes.
We are moving along the continuum.
Yes. So you just kind of disappeared. I thought, well, there's another one that's just not going to happen. And then you popped up again. And, I know, you actually were moving into the neighborhood. You really were moving into that house in Westminster. And that's when I think we were going to say, go another coffee, and go, no, let's make it dinner. And that truly was a date.
Our first date.
That was truly a date. Well, I'm not going to give you first, but that truly was a date. And I was very interested to know like how someone like you dates, because somehow, even though I had dated a number of people up to that point, I'd never dated somebody with kids. And I certainly had never dated a single father who was a full-time parent. And I remember asking you, so how does a single dad who's a full-time parent date? Do you remember what you said?
I remember the conversation.
Okay.
I remember the question. I don't remember my response.
Well, as I remember it, you said, how does therapist Joe say I should date, or how do I date?
Yeah.
Meaning you had consulted a counselor because you were very sensitive to the idea that you were raising your daughter who had lost her mother. Like at that point, I think that was already 2 or 3 years past when Carrie had passed.
Yes. Yep.
So I said, well, let's start with what therapist Joe said. So what the counselor advised you how you should date.
I don't remember.
Okay, I'll just jump in. What you're you told me, as I remember, you said therapist Joe says that I can date, but I should not introduce the women I date to my daughter, because if she would bond and meet them, then it didn't work out, then that's another loss for her, which seemed like very good advice to me who had never had a kid. So I was wondering, well, if that's what your good advice was, then how do you date? And you had a different take on it. You thought that if you were dating, that those women, well, not like you were dating multiple women at once, but if you were in a relationship with a woman, then that woman should meet and have a relationship with Kendall.
I mean, part of it is having the foreknowledge to choose wisely, which no one really does, right? I mean, you take a risk.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain point where you think the reward is greater than the risk for the young child, and you kind of bring them in. Not too early, not too late. I think she came into the picture fairly early, if I remember. Kendall
with
in
us
the first month. Yes.
Yeah,
month or 2 months.
So. Well, we were also in the same neighborhood,
right.
So we were kind of around each other. You also did wisely make your case that you could, if you kept it entirely separate, if you kept your dating life separate from your parenting life, if that really does go down the path, like one day you're just going to pop up and say, hey, this is going to be your new mom. Like, how could you ever make a fully informed decision as to really going forward with somebody if it wasn't really a match with Kendall as well? So that therein lies the risk that you felt like you had to take.
It was at that continuum of my life, finding a partner who would value my daughter as if she were her own was a key criteria. And that very early on, I mean, who knows that? That's a huge hurdle, right? For someone coming into a relationship, with a person who has a child. So that's a high expectation. But that's one of the reasons our relationship took off so well and so quickly, was because that's who you are and what you brought to the table, and what even at the time you didn't know, but you are actually pursuing that. So it turned out to be a good match for you.
It did. And I think one of the reasons it worked so well for us, and after, like, I've been very honest that I didn't make a lot of great choices. Here was you. I mean, to get to see you be a father to Kendall was like fast forwarding. Like, if you just date someone who's single and you hope, oh, they're going to turn into a committed man and they're going to be a great father and they're going to do all these things, you kind of hope for it, but you don't know. But with you, I could see that you were a person who was put on this earth to be a great father and partner and spouse. And it was kind of like dating for dummies. Like, you don't have to wonder, this is who he is. And that's truly who you've turned out to be. So the fact that you had Kendall turned out to be a bonus, not a problem, which even kind of sounds funny to even call Kendall a problem, because clearly she's a delight. And then just to fast forward for people following the story, we dated for a couple years. We got married. I legally adopted Kendall. And then I had been a big sister in the Big Brother, Big Sister program. And that little girl came to live with us full time. So that is the story of how I went from being single, never married, to married with 2 kids and our 2 girls. And we both just kind of jumped in. We jumped in and went for it. And here we are.
We did.
Anything you want to add to that?
There's 1,000 stories we could tell about.
Okay, so one story I do want to talk about.
Girls together, moving in together.
Yes.
Yes. That's probably a different thread or a different time.
Yes. We can do 1,000 phone calls on that. But one thing I do want to talk about before I let you go, there is this thread that has run through our whole relationship. So we were living in these 2 different houses in the same neighborhood in Atlanta, kind of going back and forth between the houses. And one day I come home and didn't come home. I came over to your house and there's a box of chalk dust sitting on your front doorstep that had been delivered to you. I'm like, why are you getting a box of chalk dust? Which is the beginning, as we were dating, this whole thing with points and miles. So that points and miles and travel is as old as our relationship is. It has been there from the beginning. So just tell a little bit of the story of how you kind of stumbled into that when we were starting to date.
Well, the chalk dust was actually a later artifact.
Okay.
It all started with one of the credit card bloggers, running an ad or a post on Twitter or Facebook about a promotion that Chase was having, whereby you made a $400 purchase at one of the high-end retailers, and by making that purchase, you earned enough points to fly 2 people first class to Miami using those points. And so it was pretty short. It was designed to sell a credit card, but I read it anyway. And so I was curious, like, how can that be possible? And so I simulated it, and 2 weeks later, the shoes arrived and these points posted. So I had enough points to fly American first class to, from Atlanta to Miami, which I thought was a huge win, right? At the time, I didn't know that's not a great use for those points. There's higher value points, to a higher value usage of those points. But, I learned. And so I proved that one little concept worked. And so then it just grew and grew and grew. And I think by the time we got to the chalk dust, which I think is right around, the chalk dust promotion. This was it was 2011 U.S. Airways Grand Slam. U.S. Airways.
Rest in peace.
I don't know, 5 years later was acquired by American. But at the time, they were their own airline, and they were the most generous with their award program. They provided the best inventory for the best business class seats for the fewest miles, and that's what we mean by generous. At a promotion, this is the early days of partnership marketing, which is certainly prevalent now across the airlines. If you spent any amount of money, I don't know, like 99 cents or more, the more at each of their 130 partners, and it's like every 10th partner you spent, they would give you like 20,000 miles. So if you got through enough partners, you can max out on 110,000. So it's a free business class seat round trip to Europe by spending $1 at 40 partners. And so the whole scheme was, what's the lowest price at this, at Hertz Rental Car? What's their lowest price at Hilton hotels? Can I go in and buy a Coke at the Hilton restaurant, and that'll fire the bonus? And so all this scheme, I think this was actually one of the schemes you had to go spend at some sort of chain bar. And I believe this was the same promotion where Kendall went into the bar as an 11-year-old or whatever.
Wait, before people come arrest you, you're not sending your 11. It did have a bar, but it was a restaurant at the corner. I forgot what it was called, like a Piedmont and Monroe. But you gave her this credit card, and you said, go with her little friend, and you said, go in and just get a Coke.
Just spend $1.
Spend $1, get a Coke for 99 cents.
Spend $1. Yeah.
And she came back, and she was crying.
Why was she crying?
Because
you remember what
she went up with her little friend, and she asked for a Coke, and the guy behind the counter thought she was so cute. He said, here, you can have it for free. And she was like, no, you can't give it to me for free. My dad needs me to spend $1 or he'll be mad. So she had to beg the guy to charge her for the Coke, which she did. And then you got your promotion. So it was some website that so that was the cheapest thing. You could buy some chalk dust, because I don't think we did anything with that chalk dust.
Yeah. So the beauty of the chalk dust was I was up to like the 90,000 mile threshold. And then I had to make one more purchase for $1 or whatever it was. And I found I got this chalk, right? And I figured, great, the girls could use it, draw their little things on the driveway, right? Hopscotch or whatever.
Yeah, they didn't.
In 2010. So, I just got, that's an excuse to buy it, right? So I got it, and when it got in the mail, I opened it up. It was it was a package of multicolored dust.
Yeah.
And so I guess it had some hard times. Yeah, that might have been back in the DHL days. It goes way back, but it arrived as a bunch of chalk dust, which was fine because I just wanted to get
the points.
So that was enough money to get us our second business class trip to Europe, and that trip we actually used that to go to Amalfi Coast for like $12.
I remember that
in business class. Yeah. Yep.
So let's just say an obsession was born. Before it was all said and done, I branded you Miles Husband, and that's why there's mileshusband.com. And you have the side hustle where you help people with miles and points, and you post about it on social media. And a lot of people wonder about that, so I just had to share what that's about. And you know, it really does drive our whole financial life. You have all of our finances set with credit cards and things and that. So every dollar that goes out brings in points and miles, and that's how we travel the world in luxury with not spending a lot. But it does make for some crazy things that we do. And you should have put on your list of a partner you're looking for somebody who would be a good sport about all the things that we need to do to make that kind of stuff happen.
You are that. You make a lot of sacrifices and convenience to earn nearly free luxury travel.
And we do have a lot of great adventures that there's no way in a million years we could afford. So it goes both ways. I think when people hear this, when friends hear this, they're going to maybe want to know more information and maybe have more calls about this. So you come back on. Can I call you again? And maybe we'll have a friend on, and you can help a friend maybe.
Love to talk travel using money or miles. Love to learn where people are going, get more feedback from where people have been. I think you've run across a friend recently whose sister lives in the Azores, maybe full time. These are great vignettes, great stories for me to learn from people. So, and make new friends.
And maybe we'll tell some more of our quirky stories, because we're nothing if not quirky. Yes. Well, thank you for being in that funnel cake line that day. And thank you. Oh, I will say, people wonder why I call you husband. I just want to explain that. As I said, it took forever to find one. So the fact that I found one, can't imagine a nicer word, more important word than husband. So that's my term of endearment. So instead of sweetie or honey cakes or whatever normal people call their spouses, your husband. And I say,
and I call you wife because you call me husband.
Great love. So thank you
I'm honored to be your husband.
Oh, thank you, husband. And I love you today.
I love you today.
Yeah. Let's talk soon.
Thank you for phoning a friend and bringing me in to the conversation.
Anytime.
Today.
You have my number. You can come in anytime.
Okay.
Thank you. Talk later.
All right. Bye.
And so that's the answer to the question, how you ever going to meet a guy if you're hanging out with your gay boyfriends? The real answer is, I was just having a hard time that weekend and I was sad, and my two friends took really good care of me. I trusted them. I think it was Craig or Michael or one of them that said on the call, just trust your friends. And for me, that ended up leading me to the man I was meant to spend my life with all along. So big thank you to Craig and Michael, and also to Trent. And I'm so glad that you got to meet them on this call and got to meet some of my friends, some of my most important friends. A big shout out and thank you who called that line to let me know about the friend who changed the direction of her life forever.
Hi, Daryn. This is Heidi, and I am calling to share the story of my friend Chris, who, with one small gesture, changed the course of my life forever and for the better. So back in 1999, my childhood best friend, Christine, was getting married. I was her maid of honor, and this gentleman, Chris, was her best man. And Chris and I had never met before, but we met during the rehearsal dinner, and he figured out during the rehearsal dinner that I was single. And so during the wedding reception, there was only one table that was pre-assigned, and that was for the bridal party. Well, Chris had a friend, Steve, whom he had met through scuba diving, and he decided that he wanted to be a matchmaker and pair me with Steve. And he didn't tell anybody else. And at the reception, Chris came up and said, here, Steve is going to sit next to you. And I, being the maid of honor and wanting everything to go perfectly for my friend Christine, said, well, he can't sit here because he's not part of the bridal party. And Chris said, oh, no, there's plenty of room. He can sit here. So he sat me next to Steve, who was very pleasant, and we ended up just talking throughout the entire night. And after the wedding, Steve asked for my number, and the rest is history. And we're coming up on 24 years of marriage now. And unfortunately, Chris passed away a few years ago from cancer, but I will forever, forever be grateful to Chris for making that introduction.
But this podcast ultimately isn't just about my friends. It's about your friends as well. And if you would like to give a shout out to one of your friends, just to say hey, to say thank you, like an old-fashioned dedication on the radio, I have a phone number where you can do that now, where you just call and leave a message. And the number is, let me get that, it is 912-766-0446. So you can just call any time of day, leave your message, leave your dedication, and there's a good chance I will play it on a future episode. Can't wait to hear from you, to hear about one of your friends. And whatever you do, please just call me friend. We'll chat soon. You've been listening to Call Me Friend. Executive producers for this show are Daryn Kagan and me, Daryn Kagan. The show is produced by Produce Your Podcast and Journeyus Inc. Production by Abe Fowlett and Tammy Gagnon. This episode is powered by Miss Lou's Cabin, an Airbnb property on a remote section of the Georgia coast.
Before you go, Call Me Friend is more than a podcast, it's a community. So head over to callmefriendpodcast.com to join the conversation. Or you can call or send a text to 912-766-0446, and you can leave Daryn a message there, or maybe even share a story of your own. Because when life gets real, you don't have to go it alone. Call a friend. Call this friend.